Your child comes home from school, drops their bag, and says, "I'm just not good at anything." And for a second, you don't know what to say, because somewhere deep down, you remember feeling exactly the same way. That moment, that quiet, heavy moment, is more important than you think. And today, we're going to talk about exactly what to do with it. Because here's what most parents don't know. Feelings of inferiority in children are not a problem to be fixed. They are a signal to be understood. And once you understand what's really happening inside your child, everything changes. The way you talk to them, the way you support them, the way they see themselves. So stay with me, because what you're about to hear might completely shift how you see your child's struggles. Alfred Adler was one of the most important psychologists of the 20th century. And unlike many of his contemporaries, he was deeply interested in something very practical. Why do some people grow up feeling capable and connected, while others spend their lives feeling like they're never quite enough? His answer was both simple and profound. Every single child, without exception, experiences feelings of inferiority. Not because something is wrong with them, but because they are small in a world made for adults. They are learning in a world full of people who already know. They are dependent in a world that values independence. Inferiority, Adler said, is the starting point of human development. Not a flaw, but the very engine of growth. The question is never whether your child feels inferior. The question is what they do with that feeling. And that is where you come in. Think about what happens when a child feels inferior and has no way to process it. They don't usually sit down and think, "I feel inadequate and I need to work through this." What they do is compensate. They find ways to manage the discomfort. And those ways can go in very different directions. Some children compensate by withdrawing. They stop trying. They tell themselves they don't care about the thing they're actually desperate to be good at. A child who says, "I hate reading," might actually be a child who feels devastated every time they struggle with words. And giving up feels safer than failing again. Other children compensate by dominating. They become controlling, aggressive, or bossy, not because they're bad kids, but because feeling powerful is the only way they know to escape feeling small. And some children compensate by performing. They become the perfect student, the one who never makes mistakes, who is always smiling, always helpful, not out of genuine confidence, but out of a deep fear that if they ever stumble, their value will disappear with it. None of these children are broken. All of them are doing something very human. They're trying to find their way from feeling small to feeling like they matter. Adler believed that what children are really searching for, underneath all the compensations, all the behaviors, all the struggles, is a sense of belonging and a sense of significance. They want to know, do I have a place here? And do I have something to contribute? When a child feels inferiority deeply and consistently, it's almost always because one or both of those needs are not being met. Either they don't feel like they truly belong in their family, their classroom, their social world, or they don't feel like they have real value to offer. And here is something Adler said that every parent needs to hear. The antidote to inferiority is not praise, it is contribution. When a child feels useful, genuinely, concretely useful, something shifts inside them. Not because you told them they were wonderful, but because they experience themselves as capable. There's a difference between a child who is told you're so smart and a child who helps a younger sibling learn to tie their shoes and sees the result of their effort. One receives a message from outside. The other discovers something about themselves from within. This is why one of the most powerful things you can do for a child struggling with inferiority feelings is to give them real responsibility. Not manufactured tasks, not empty praise disguised as chores, but genuine moments where their contribution actually matters. Where dinner is a little better because they helped. Where the garden is a little more alive because they watered it. Where a problem got solved because they were part of the solution. Now, this doesn't mean you load a struggling child with pressure. Adler was very clear about the difference between encouragement and pressure. and it's a distinction that changes everything. Pressure says, you need to be better. Encouragement says, I believe in your ability to try. Pressure is focused on the outcome. Encouragement is focused on the process and the person. When a child brings home a grade they're not proud of, pressure sounds like, you need to study harder. You're capable of better than this. Encouragement sounds like, that was a tough one. What do you think made it hard? What would you want to do differently next time? Do you see the difference? One puts the child in front of a standard they may feel they cannot reach. The other puts them in front of themselves, their own experience, their own reflection, their own agency. Adler called this kind of engagement social interest, the belief that the child is not alone in their struggle, that the adults around them are genuinely invested, not in the child's performance, but in the child themselves. Let's talk about something that Adler identified as one of the most damaging things a parent can do, often without realizing it. He called it pampering, and it doesn't mean spoiling a child with toys or treats. What Adler meant by pampering is something subtler and more common, doing for a child what they could do for themselves. When we rush to solve every problem before the child has a chance to sit with it, when we smooth every difficulty before they've had the chance to try, when we protect them so thoroughly from disappointment that they never get the chance to discover they can survive it, this feels like love. It looks like love. But what it communicates to the child beneath the surface is, you are not capable of handling this. You need me to do it for you. And that message, absorbed over and over, deepens inferiority rather than dissolving it. The goal is not to let children struggle unnecessarily, but to let them struggle enough to discover that effort leads somewhere, enough to learn that failing at something doesn't mean failing as a person, enough to build what Adler called courage, not the absence of fear, but the willingness to move forward anyway. One of the most important things you can offer a child who carries a heavy sense of inferiority is a reframe of what mistakes mean. In many homes and in most schools, mistakes are treated as evidence. Evidence of not being smart enough, not working hard enough, not being enough. And children absorb that. They start to treat every mistake as a verdict on who they are. Adler saw it completely differently. He saw every mistake as information, as a natural, necessary part of learning and growing. He believed that children who are afraid to make mistakes are children who have learned that their value is conditional, that they are only acceptable when they succeed. So how do you change this? Not by telling your child it's okay to make mistakes, because words alone rarely shift a deep belief. You change it by how you respond when mistakes happen. By staying calm when they spill something, struggle with homework, say something unkind to a friend. By saying out loud, okay, that didn't work. What can we learn from that? By making visible your own mistakes, not in a performative way, but honestly. I got that wrong. Let me think about what I missed. Children learn the meaning of failure from watching the adults they trust. If you respond to your own setbacks with shame or frustration, they will conclude that failure is a catastrophe. If you respond with curiosity and resilience, they will slowly learn to do the same. Now, there's something else Adler emphasized that often gets overlooked in conversations about children's psychology, and it is this. The child's position within the family shapes their experience of inferiority in specific, predictable ways. An oldest child who has been dethroned by a younger sibling often feels a deep, unnamed grief. A middle child may feel invisible, neither the pioneer nor the baby, always searching for a unique place in the family story. A youngest child may feel perpetually small, always looking up at people who seem to know more, do more, be more. None of this is destiny, but understanding it helps you see what your individual child might be carrying that has nothing to do with their intelligence or worth, and everything to do with how they've interpreted their experience of growing up in your particular family. When you start to see behavior through this lens, not why is my child acting this way, but what is my child trying to communicate about how they see themselves and where they belong, you become a very different kind of parent. A more compassionate one. a more effective one. Here is the deep truth at the heart of everything Adler taught about inferiority. The feeling itself is not the problem. The problem is when a child becomes convinced that the feeling is permanent, that it is the truth about who they are, that there is nothing they can do to change it. Your job, and it is one of the most important jobs in the world, is to be the consistent, patient, loving evidence that that belief is wrong. Not through lectures, not through performance charts or reward systems or comparison to other children, but through presence, through the way you look at them when they're struggling, through the questions you ask when they're confused, through the way you make space for their difficulty without rushing to erase it. Every time you sit beside a child in their hard moment, instead of trying to fix it away, you are giving them a gift more valuable than any achievement they could earn. You are showing them that they are worth staying for, that their struggle does not make them less, that they belong right here, exactly as they are. And slowly, quietly, over time, that becomes the story they tell themselves. Not, I'm not good enough, but I am someone who keeps trying. Not, I always fail, but I am someone who learns. Not, I don't belong here, but I have a place, and I have something to give. That is what Adler wanted for every child. That is what you are building, one small moment at a time. And that is enough. If this resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear this. Don't forget to like the video. And if you want more videos like this, make sure to subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.